I don't know about you, but sometimes planes fly over while I begin my sermon. I have really interesting memories that pop up on Facebook. For better and worse, Facebook memories are a neat thing to have because they bring about lots of interesting memories. Duh. Um, One came up that was particularly pertinent from 2013. You may not remember, but one of the big things that happened was the Boston Marathon bombing in April of 2013. Having just moved from Boston a couple years before, it kind of hit very close to home, being that I know people that run in that marathon. And a friend of mine from seminary said, "Did you know that the boy who died in the bombing's name was Martin?" And I thought, wow, to think that that was another Martin that was killed in April who stood up for peace and love and was killed by violence. It's a strange thing how those who stand up for peace and love are often killed by violence, and yet through that inspire people to love and care for other people in a way they would not have before. That to me, it resonates very deeply with, I think, the best interpretation of what Peter was talking about in the book of Acts today. Now, much of the New Testament has been used as sort of clobber passages against Jews throughout history. And one of them is this passage from today, where Peter accuses the Israelites of killing the author of life. You are the ones that handed him over to Pilate. You are the ones that caused him to die. It's really, really easy to get caught up in ignorance around that and cause terrible things to happen. We're going to come to that in just a minute. But what I do like is that he points out, you did this in ignorance. But nonetheless, God has vindicated him by raising him from the dead, giving power in his name, and allowing us to bring the kingdom of heaven about in a new way. Is ignorance a good or bad thing? Some say bad. I would say it's a chaotic neutral. What is ignorance? Lack of knowledge. Who here knows everything? Exactly.
Yes.
I see you, Augie. Who is knowledgeable about everything in the world and everything there is to know and do and be and see and hear? Not a single human being on the planet. So in other words, everyone is ignorant. Now, that being said, when you combine ignorance with fear, with hatred, with animosity, good people die. That's just a fact of human history. The metaphor and cliche of people grabbing their torches and pitchforks to go kill someone, witch burnings, angry mobs, people stoning people to death out of rage. These are the sorts of things that come about when people don't understand things or don't know what's going on, and the consequences are dire. How many acts of violence and how many innocent people have been taken out by those things? One of the key ones for us is Jesus. The misunderstanding of what he was trying to do, particularly by the Roman authorities who had him executed for treason, meant that he died. The ministry he was trying to accomplish was cut short. But God had other plans and used it for good. And just as that's the case, the Boston Marathon brought about so much charity, so much life, so much new and help and interesting work around prosthetic limbs, around caring for people, and trying to understand better why people would do these things. So, if ignorance is a lack of knowledge, how does it affect us? So Chip, if I don't know how to assemble rockets, am I a bad person or am I just lacking knowledge? Well, said bad person. That's a loving wife right there. I'll tell you that. I mean, is the world going to be a morally worse place if I don't become an expert in rocket science? No. Exactly. There's plenty out there. All right. So, but if I don't try to figure out my own ethical code and I don't explore ethics, does that have an impact on the world around me? There's also different kinds of knowledge that we can have and different kinds of ignorance that we can have. Like, I don't think you're going to want to pick up any books by Aristotle at the moment or books by Paul Tillich, who is a slog even for nerds like me. But you also engage in ethical questions and ethical engagements by virtue of being part of this community. And that is sort of the thrust of what I want to bring forward with today's reading is what ignorances do we hold that are harmless, and then what ignorances do we hold that could be harmful? What ignorances or what grace can we bring out of tragedies? Better yet, what if instead of trying to find the silver lining in tragedies, what if we tried to live in a way to learn more, to gain more knowledge and gain more wisdom in order to prevent such things? Ultimately, what is the key ingredient that it doesn't matter if you have ignorance or knowledge that makes a difference? Ethics, compassion, love. So whether you're building rockets, whether you're playing rock and roll, whether you are doing accounting, whether you are training guide dogs for the blind, whether you're doing civil engineering, doesn't matter what you do, you have knowledge to give to others. You have knowledge about things. But without love, without compassion, without ethics, without thinking about how to care for one another, that knowledge doesn't do a whole lot of good. As Paul would say, if you have all the knowledge of the world, but you don't have love, you're a noisy gong or resounding cymbal. Now, I can go in there and bang on my cymbal for a few minutes and tell me how quickly it gets annoying to you. I used to be that insufferable know-it-all. And what I'd like to see is how we continue to nudge ourselves in a direction where, even if it's just in our own little corner of the world, we continue to be voices for not only learning things about ourselves, learning things about others, but incorporating love into that mix more deeply. So that we don't have anti-Semitic sentiments that cause things like the Holocaust because of people misunderstanding passages like what Peter was saying. And so that we hear each other, especially in moments where it's really, really hard to do so that we build better relationships, so that we don't lose life for the sake of love and peace. And that we build a world where the differences that we bring to the mix bring a richness to our lives rather than making us afraid of one another. So where is grace in our lives? Particularly as we recognize where we may not have all the knowledge that we want to have about things, particularly about ourselves. And how do we bring knowledge, wisdom, and love to the world to bring about that grace? Amen.